Okay. Thank you all for being here, the heavy hitter night. Thank you all. "40 years, soon to be 40 rides." I could play a riff on a number. What a long, strange ride it's been, but you know what? Not strange at all, pretty wonderful. Each one having brought us closer by the mile. After last year's record-breaking ride and gift of $56 million, our total gift to Dana-Farber since 1980 is $654 million. I know there... Bill O'Fano, we running those slides? Thank you very much. Okay. But that's old news. The goal for 2019 is $58 million. Nothing intimidating there. And currently, we've raised about $7.5 million. Small number, but it's up 5% year to date. 35% of all PMC riders achieve heavy hitter status. Big numbers, very impressive. And that group, your group, raises 60% of all PMC funds. There is, in fact, a lot riding on you. This year's bar has been set at $8,500, and the top 10% set by you based on last year's performance is $13,000. Again, nothing intimidating there. Your recognition for either of these astounding fundraising feats is a lightweight, high visibility, water and wind resistant New Balance jacket. That's my way of saying to you all, nobody's doing this for the gifts, though it's a very nice gift. We just concluded our second strategic business plan in the last 7 years, conducted by 15-year rider Bill Ackmeyer and the very talented Parthenon Group. You won't be surprised to learn that the two primary reasons people are passionate about the PMC is funding cancer research at Dana-Farber and sharing the weekend ride with family and friends. What you might be surprised to learn that you identified the 100% pass-through as the single most important attribute of PMC DNA. The 100% pass-through provides transparency and motivation for the extra effort required to reach our fundraising goals. And I am proud to say this will be our 13th consecutive year on delivering on that promise. One of the reasons we are able to pass through 100% of all rider-raised money is because of the support and underwriting of our sponsors. This group of sponsors not only help to underwrite the PMC, but has riding teams, volunteers, and donates as well. Special acknowledgement to our co-presenting sponsors, New Balance and the Red Sox Foundation, as well as our hub site and media sponsors. And please welcome, new to the PMC this year, Athletic Brewing Company, Back Bay Roasters and Brewers, EMD Serrano, and G3 Starter. Thank you, these new sponsors. And before I segue into acknowledging a few special people, please remember to circle the calendar for the 40th anniversary PMC Check Presentation Gala, which will be held the evening of Saturday, October 19th at the Courageous Sailing Center in Charlestown. Tickets will go on sale in mid-June. And in case you wonder how we work a calendar in the PMC world, this is the 40th ride. When we give the money, that's the anniversary of the 40th ride. My brother always corrected me on that, but I told him we worked by a different clock. I am pleased to announce that after a national search for a new Chief Operating and Business Development Officer that attracted over 600 candidates, the path led back to my own hometown. We have hired Jared Collins, 10-year PMC rider from Wellesley, who was employee #1 on the ground in Rwanda at the University of Global Health Equity for Partners in Health. We're excited to have Jared on board. Jared, you're somewhere in the front. Will you please stand up? Stand up over here. PMC head staff member Jack Mowat has been in charge of bike mechanics for almost 30 years. I first met and recruited Jack to the PMC in 1987 during and after the Mount Washington bike race. He was too tired to say no, so he stayed for 30 years. Jack recently underwent treatment and stem cell transplant, and I'm pleased to report that Jack is doing well and in recovery. Jack made a quick stop by the Eastern Kid Ride a couple of weeks ago and will be throwing out the first pitch as part of PMC Night at Fenway on June 7th. We all wish Jack a speedy recovery. I would now like to take a moment to recognize Michael Freeze. Michael is 81 and a 37-year rider. And maybe more importantly, he is the second largest PMC lifetime fundraiser, having raised over $5 million since he started riding in 1983. He is here tonight with his lovely wife, Linda, and I want to tell two quick stories about Michael. I may laugh a little, and I didn't write the notes because I just like telling them. The first one is when I got engaged to my lovely wife, Meredith. My grandmother had a family heirloom, and my grandmother did not have much money, but she held on to this gorgeous ring. For some reason, Meredith, who was, really great, she just didn't initially love it. So we were at Gordon Brothers, meeting Michael and his father, who now Michael is an exact dead ringer for. And, Michael's picking up on Meredith's hesitation. He goes to me, he says, "Billy, take Meredith out to lunch. Just leave the ring with me." I thought he was going to hawk it and, get another ring. So I take Meredith to lunch, and we come back, and the ring was transformed. I mean, he probably cleaned it, but he set my marriage off on a very positive foot. I mean, I didn't have to disappoint my grandmother. I got to make my wife to be happy, and it's been bliss ever since. So thank you, Michael. The second story goes back to the early years. Obviously, I got to know Michael. He was the ringleader of Gordon Brothers. They brought in a team. They rode. They volunteered. But Michael was the heart. People really respected him. Michael had an athlete's heart, but he was somewhat accident-prone. Part of the humor became he had pretty big donors that they would have given him twice the money if he just wouldn't ride. But Michael rode, and in those days, we all wore multiple hats. So when I used to finish my ride, I'd get in a van and start doing cleanup crew and whatever, and I get a bulletin. Michael separated his shoulder again. Another bike accident from Michael. And I'm going there to pick up Michael. And, I'm beginning to learn that he's actually pretty important to me. He raises a lot of money, but he's a passionate guy. He cares about the mission, but he cares about people. And I pick up Michael, and I think he's in a sling or something. All he wanted to talk about was the bike mechanic who had helped him, a young man who was in recovery from drug addiction, and how the PMC and other events were putting this guy on a better path. And Michael was turned on by that, and he wanted to share the story. And I can only say that, you know, in my relationship with Michael, he has always been supportive. He believes in uplifting people. I gave you the numbers. He supported me, the Dana-Farber, but he came with his, you know, his money, his fundraising, his ask, his credibility, and quite frankly, he did a lot for this event. So let's everybody, they took my glass, pick up a glass and salute Michael Freeze, please. Yeah, Michael. You know, I can't see with the lights down, but originally we had 4, and we have actually 3 of the top 5 lifetime fundraisers with us tonight. And I don't know if Josh made it off the plane. Is Josh somewhat here? But anyway, I'll say it, just that. David Fialco, who couldn't be with us, past chairman, is number 5. Patrick Byrne, who you'll meet in a moment, is number 4. Charlie Larson, who was riding since 1981, has brought in his kids and grandchildren to this event, is number 3. Michael Freeze is number 2. And number 1, with a bullet, is PMC board member, 26-year rider, chairman of the Dana-Farber. Is Josh here? Is Josh here? Stand up, Josh. Come on, Josh. And yes, Josh, once again, you don't get the microphone, but I want to acknowledge what a great, great job you've done. Our keynote speaker tonight is Patrick Byrne, who many of you were introduced to 20 years ago at this same heavy hitter evening. But before I get to Patrick, and because this is Mother's Day weekend, I want to acknowledge his mother, Dorothy Byrne, who is with us tonight. You're premature. I think it is fair to say that not only did Dorothy give life to Patrick, she also saved his life many times over with her love, dedication, and focus on his treatment over many years of his battles with cancer almost 4 decades ago. As Patrick said in his PMC keynote speech 20 years ago at the Kennedy Library, she was his rock, refusing to surrender to the poorly titled salvage therapy that might have suppressed the spirits of a lesser patient or patient's mother. Now I want to add a modest footnote to that story with a PMC twist some 10 years later, when Patrick had committed already to the PMC in the year 2000. Patrick and I used to meet annually at the Shallow Shaft restaurant in Alta, Utah. After funding the PMC personally and as a corporate underwriter, Patrick said, no mas. He had already been a great friend and sponsor for 10 years, so I graciously accepted the bitter news and thanked him for all he had done to turbocharge the PMC's growth. Then I did what anyone in my position would have done, knowing what I knew. I went to his mother. And I asked her to please sponsor my ride. I never told Patrick this. And she has generously done so for the last 10 years. What a woman. Will you please give a warm welcome to Dorothy Byrne. And now my introduction for Patrick. In 1999, I had read an article in Fortune magazine that portrayed an extraordinary entrepreneur named Patrick Byrne, the son of Jack Byrne, who had co-founded the Fireman's Fund with Warren Buffett. Patrick's young life had already taken many remarkable turns. By the age of 36, he'd accumulated a rather idiosyncratic resume. He was a PhD in philosophy from Stanford. He was an online entrepreneur who had created Overstock.com. He had biked cross-country 3 times, and he was a 3-time cancer survivor. I decided I needed to reach out to this guy and interest him in the PMC. Getting a hold of him turned out to be relatively easy. When we spoke, he listened politely for about 10 minutes and told me to please send him some materials. I did. Now, this was 1999, and even email was relatively new. Several weeks later, I received an email from Patrick that said the following: "I'm incredibly impressed with what you do. How might I serve you?" And without a speed bump between my brain and fingertips, I emailed back, "I would like you to ride from Salt Lake to Sturbridge, speak at PMC opening ceremonies, and give me $1 million. I didn't hear back for several weeks. And I thought that perhaps I might have overstepped. So now I knew it was on me to call, and I called them again, and rare for me, was somewhat tongue-tied as I realized this was a big ask. So I mustered up little more than, "Patrick, what do you think?" And you know, this may be an inside joke to tell that he always wanted to be as cool as Coach Joe, and he had his own line, but in my life, what I'm about to share is the coolest line I've ever heard. And Patrick said to me, after me asking, "What do you think?" He said, like a samurai in an old Kurosawa movie, he responded with the coolest line I'd ever heard. And he said, "I don't think there was anything inappropriate in your ask. But if you don't mind, I'll start from San Francisco." A relationship was born. What followed was an announcement to PMC World that if we raised $11 million up from the 10 million from the 8.7, Patrick would add a $1 million. And I, of course, said to him, "Look, I'm all for leveraging everything, but if we don't make it, you got to give it to me anyway." But we worked it that way. And off Patrick went on his circuitous cross-country trip. He hit something on his 50-day opportunity. He hit all the major cities and markets to promote the PMC and his new company. He was a media magnet, not because he was handsome and articulate, not because he was wealthy, not because he was biking cross-country, and not because he was a 3-time cancer survivor. He was a magnet because he was a pioneer in the very exciting new World Wide Web and online businesses. So off he went. He biked cross-country, wearing our jersey, spreading our mission on radio and TV. And he even flew into Boston during his ride to give an electrifying speech at the Kennedy Library in June of 2000. It was deeply moving and a PMC threshold moment. Now, there's a little asterisk to Patrick's cross-country ride. Actually, there are a few, but only time for one. Having just taped on NBC's The Today Show with Brian Gumbel, he was getting ready for his last leg to come up to Sturbridge and address the group on opening ceremonies. But side effects from his past treatment literally benched him in a hospital in Greenwich, Connecticut, just 120 miles from Sturbridge. Patrick, being a man of his word and with gallows humors and tact, arrived in Sturbridge the next day for opening ceremonies in an ambulance and spoke modestly that his every effort propelling him cross-country for the 4th time was pretty much thanks to you all. Over the next 10 years, Patrick chipped away at his Sturbridge to Provincetown ride. He still hasn't ridden born to Provincetown. But perhaps more importantly, he and Overstock.com put $4.5 million into the PMC coffers. And without question, that phone call 20 years ago changed our fundraising trajectory forever and demonstrated to the world what a bike was meant to do.